introduce our panelists, and let's just go ahead and applaud them all at the end once they're on stage with us. So first we have Dana Harmon, the Executive Director of the Texas Energy Poverty Research Institute. We also have Eric Dresselhaus, the President of Smart Energy Water. We have Santil Jenkins, the CEO of the Heat and Warmth Fund, and a good friend of mine, Damali Harding, Managing Partner at Amendment 9 Strategic Consulting. So thank you all for joining us. So before we get into our conversation around providing services to low and moderate income families, Damali, I know you had a few stats that you wanted to share with the audience to kind of help them give a good understanding of what this conversation is going to entail.
So just to anchor the conversation a little bit, one of the topics that we are all obviously very passionate about is energy poverty. And so I pulled some statistics to kind of discuss what is the gap. We're going to really focus on the United States. And so the United States, there's a group of economists that every year have performed a home energy affordability gap, and that's actually their website. And so in 2018, the proposed gap, or what they estimated the gap to be for energy for all households between really what they could afford to pay and what they should be paying is $51 billion. To put that in reference, the total funding for LIHEAP, if you include all programs and everything, LIHEAP is the program that the federal government has set aside to help low income, is less than $4 billion. So we have quite a bit of gap to research to think about how we're going to innovate our way through.
Thank you, Damali. So let's start by talking about what's going on today. And Dana, we can start with you, and then we can just kind of work our way down the line. What are some of the biggest challenges utilities face today when it comes to serving low and moderate income customers?
Thanks, Erin, and thank you for having me. I think we can take a lot of the conversation that we've just been having about the complexities with the dynamic utility business model, the energy transition, and we just make it a bit harder when we talk about low-income consumers. We have a consumer group that is relatively hard to engage, that lacks access to capital, access to credit, often doesn't own their own homes. And so when we talk about how do we make these new services and technologies available for low income, we've got to get a bit smarter about how we address those issues.
Yeah, well, we had a great chat preparing for the call, and one of the things that we see working with clients down on the ground, hit on those things. The appeal now, as we talk about this transition into energy, is who can I sell a solar panel to? Who can I put a power wall to? And that segmentation of customers, it's been easy to just overlook this group of people. One of the things that we've seen that's maybe a little bit of a green shoot of the promise is that as we've looked at demand response programs and we've looked at dynamic pricing programs, participation from both low-income and elderly households tends to skew higher than average. And so you say, well, why would that be? That kind of fights the stereotype. And the answer, it turns out, is share of wallet. Right? $5 may not mean a lot to somebody with a $400 electricity bill who's got the money to heat both the pool and the hot tub, but for somebody that's working on a fixed income or is in a more income-challenged area, saving $5 or $10 is meaningful. And so if you can find those mechanisms to engage with these communities, the responsiveness is great and the satisfaction is high.
I think Eric hit the nail on the head. Amounts of money that seem minuscule to many mean a lot when you have an annual income of $10,000. So any way that we can use technology, clean energy, green energy, to help low-income and vulnerable populations save money, they're interested, especially if these services are provided in a way that helps people maintain their dignity. When they're able to engage in the process, they're much more likely to participate.
And Damali, what are you seeing in terms of challenges to kind of catering to these communities' needs today?
I think one of the other challenges that we're starting to see is also just a lack of education around the assistance programs. And so when I was working in Philadelphia, that was a big thing that we went out to the communities and even the local utility said, we're having trouble getting people to come to events, to sign up, to engage. You know, how can we partner with different community organizations? How can we partner with different groups to meet people where they are to try to kind of prevent and fill some of that gap?
So Dana and Santiago, this is actually something we talked about on our prep call. How does this definition of poverty between federal, state, and local agencies influence utilities' ability to provide programs and services to these communities? Because it seems like there are kind of different definitions of what is poverty in these communities. So how does that create a challenge for some utilities?
Absolutely. The different definitions were selected for different reasons, whether it's a multiple of the federal poverty guideline, like uses 150% of poverty, or if it's a fraction of area median income. Those were all selected for reasons to serve certain communities. But what it creates is really a fragmentation of programs that can make it very different to try to leverage existing resources. So, as Molly mentioned, here in Texas, we know that LIHEAP serves about less than 5% of the eligible population here in this state, which really means that there's a lot of opportunity, a lot of ground to make up to really try to address the energy burden or the percentage of household income that's spent on energy for low-income communities. And I'd like to actually even touch just quickly on a point that Eric made a moment ago regarding the $5 or $10 making a difference. We know that there's the heat or eat phenomenon. Low-income people may have to make difficult choices between keeping the lights on and putting food on the table. And so if we can start to address some of those issues, there's real quality of life benefits that can make a difference for neighbors in our community.
I know these guys are going to speak next, but I want you to repeat one thing you just said. It's 5% of eligible households. It's not 5% of overall households. I hear those numbers and they go one ear out the other. It's really important to know that 95% of households that are eligible for these programs, we're not getting to those households. That's kind of crazy. I'm sorry.
I just have to say that is absolutely crazy. In Michigan, it's close to 50%, which I still think is crazy, but 5% is unimaginable. But one of the problems that having the different levels of income or different criteria for these programs causes is it makes it difficult for utility companies to leverage one with the other. If one is 150% of the federal poverty level and then another is 60% of the area median income, it makes it very difficult for you to work with customers to help find all the programs that are out there that could help make a household energy burden more bearable.
And if I may even expand on that point, it's not just utility or energy programs, but it's other programs that are serving the community. We've been talking a lot with affordable housing providers and looking at how low-income housing tax credits are structured and what opportunities are there to align those community development programs with utility programs to encourage more energy efficiency in low-income homes. And we actually hosted a convening of utility energy program administrators and community development organizations and affordable housing providers last spring. And one of the things that we noticed is we were doing a lot of this, right? That the housing sector and the energy sector weren't speaking the same language. So I think there's a definition of poverty alignment that's important, but also an alignment of goals and objectives that can help us really better leverage some of those limited resources so that we can better serve our communities in need.
So it does sound like there is this big space for education. Education is going to play a large role in bringing these programs and services to these communities. So can you guys speak to how education is going to impact the utility's ability to serve these low-income, moderate-income families and communities?
I was going to say, I can start with that because education is a really big important point for me personally. And I think one of the things is we have to kind of look at how we engage with our customers. We still talk to our customers in terms of kilowatt hours. We don't talk to them in terms of what they really understand, which is dollars and cents. We also can do some very basic education. I used to go around literally to anybody who would listen to me speak and in under a minute explain just very basic generation, transmission, distribution. This is who you get your bill from. This is how you can choose your provider. That's what that means. And you start to see people where the light bulb goes off. I think also in terms of education, one of the greatest points I always make, particularly for people on fixed incomes, is to check your bill at least once a quarter. And this is obviously more important in states that are deregulated, but we had a lot of issues with slamming and with people paying much higher rates. And so just simply doing something is checking your bill or calling a local organization and walking your bill through them. And really just making sure your customer service agents, the people who are engaging with your customers, are cognizant of the needs of the different customers. So if a customer calls and wants to walk through your bill, it may not be an antagonizing relationship. It may just simply be, I want to understand this a little bit better. And so I think that education aspect is really, really critical.
I agree, and I think education is important on both sides. It's important for utilities to understand the experience of low-income customers because it helps you better train the people who are answering the phones and the people who are going out to the homes. It helps you empathize more, but on the flip side, making sure that customers understand their rights, understand the programs that are out there, especially programs for low-income and vulnerable customers like seniors and people with medical conditions. There's often assistance available, but people in the community just don't know.
Yeah, I'd add two things. One, kind of back to the first panel, which was talking about education of a different type. I'd remind everybody to make sure that we get out to schools and high schools, and even before high schools, really, I think grade schools is where this is going to start. You look at every major transition we have societally, recycling, and we used to just throw the cans on the side of the road, right? And by the way, all adults are too stupid to train, right? But kids are pretty smart, right? They get it, right? Seat belts, right? You can't teach adults to wear seat belts, but we did that by getting to schools. And so I know that's a long play, that you don't maybe get the results overnight, but nothing will spread information faster than kids nagging parents. So first off, don't forget that one. And then on the flip side, because maybe my role on this is technology, I think this is a place where AI is going to play an important role in all aspects of how we engage with customers, including these communities. We've got a customer service rep who could be getting a call, and this call could be somebody looking for solar panels, and this call could be the guy that just bought the Porsche that wants to know what high rate charger is, and then the next person that calls is a person that's having a hard time paying the bill, right? It's a big challenge to put that on the CSR who's got to kind of pick up the phone and instantly kind of pivot left or right. So technology available now that we can be predictive about what this call is likely to be about and kind of coach CSRs on what's next best action and how to engage. And I think that's part of how we're going to educate the people on the utility side, give them better tools and make it easier on them, because those folks have a tough job and they're asked to do a lot of things.
I agree with each of those points, and I'll say on the, I loved how Paula kind of set us up talking about our, this is an opportunity for learning and, changing how we do things. And I think on the utility side, there's real opportunity for this dialogue with low-income consumers and really understanding the needs of the community, which in addition to, good corporate social responsibility, it is really, there's a utilization of resources there. And, if I can target my low-income programs in a way that really meets the need of the community, there's reduced cost opportunity there for outreach and education. But additionally, tying it back to the first panel, when it comes to educating consumers, I love that concept of energy agency, greater agency, and greater energy management. And education is really the gateway to empower low-income consumers to take control of their consumption and their cost and really make those resources available for consumers.
And you just mentioned technology, so let's bring technology into this conversation because it is going to enable utilities to better engage with these communities. So how particularly, let's start with mobile apps, because this is something that we all discussed on our prep call. How have mobile apps influenced customers, particularly the low and moderate income customers' ability to engage with the utility? And Dana, I'll start with you.
Sure. So, I think it's pretty widely understood now that, most people have smartphones. The penetration of smartphones in low-income communities is pretty astounding, and it's a way to connect with the world. So, we've done some recent market research showing that the greatest social media apps being utilized by low-income households are YouTube and Facebook. And so, I think there's this opportunity to really meet consumers where they are, already speaking languages that they understand, and it's a great opportunity to make them engage.
Yeah, when we say meet people where they are, by the way, where they are is right here.
Yeah.
Right? It's not a place that you don't know and they haven't shown you on the map, right? That's where they are. And I think the other thing you say is, first off, yes, mobile apps, and we're going to talk, adaptive web pages and all that. Text, right? It's in some cases not much more complicated than that. And one of the things I think as a utility industry we've tended to do is we say, we've got great programs. All you have to do is go to the website and read the 37-page document and see how great that program. I mean, that's awesome, right? And that's just not that's not a low income, high income. That's just not the way people interact anymore, right? So use text. Make it bite-sized, and start a dialogue. You're talking about bringing people into the conversation and doing things with dignity and respect. And if somebody feels like they're being asked an opinion and they've got a say and they can make some choices, and those choices are no more complicated than the number one design criteria, which is can I do it with my thumb, right? If I can do that, then you're really on something.
Your point on text messages. I agree completely. We had a pilot a couple of years ago at the Heat One Fund where we were texting customers daily and saying, yesterday we spent $5 on your gas and electricity. Your budget for the month is $30, so you were this percentage of the way there. Every day customers received a text message. And by the end of this 1-year pilot, 80% of the households had cleared out their arrears and had avoided accumulating more arrears. Over 90% had saved 20% or reduced their gas bills by 20% and their electric bills by about 10%. So when people know, and it was dollars and cents, not kilowatts. When people know in real time, and you can use technology to do that, they're able to better manage their money and their energy.
I also think that there's a wide spectrum if you look at utilities across the country and how they utilize mobile. And so some just kind of look at their mobile apps as a means to share very basic information. Here's your bill, here's how you contact us, report an outage. I've seen very little use of mobile apps as a terms of means of creating an emotional connection with the customer. So even something like that text is a perfect example of how you can do that. And so I have more connection to my phone company that has a specific app that every Tuesday they send me, hey, here's your latest surprise. What would happen if we rethink to say, like, every Tuesday, hey, here's your latest energy usage, or every Tuesday, here's something that we can connect, that's something that can go viral, or here's something, here's a 30-second snippet on what we just did to help create better reliability versus the kind of polished packaging that we tend to see from utilities. I would love to see more things in real time, and that I think would actually help move the needle in terms of people when they think about, we're talking about electricity, but even thinking about water usage, gas usage. I'm originally from DC. DC Water has an unofficial Twitter word, DC Library, right? That people love to engage in and they love to see, to say, hey, we heard you at this. Those are some things that you can do that actually create an emotional connection for customers that now I'm going to be much more likely, if I have a problem, to look at you as a potential solution versus an adversary.
Right, and it lets you do it on the time. One thing I forgot to mention, we had one client was telling us, we're just going through some things about bill payment. They had a crazy statistic, I think I'm about right on this, that something like 40% of their households that were kind of habitual late pay or normal arrears households ended up paying their bill between midnight and 4 a.m. Right? So if you think, hey, I held a workshop down at the community center at 2 o'clock on Tuesday, people are working. right? They're not coming to your thing. And so giving them these tools and leveraging technology can let people engage whenever it's right for them. And that may be riding the bus home or when they just have a break or something. So it kind of has that separation in time as well.
So we've been talking about how we can communicate better to customers to understand their usage, maybe reduce their usage and be able to better pay their bills. One other avenue that people are exploring is this idea of prepay. And Eric, I'll start with you because you introduced this to our conversation on our prep call. What role is prepay playing in helping customers pay their bills? Maybe it's working some places, but it's not always working for everyone. What are you seeing around here?
Yeah, I think it's seen a lot of traction. It kind of builds off something you said, Cynthia, which is prepaid changes the way you think about energy. So if you just got to go to the grocery store, put stuff in your cart, and leave, and at the end of the month somebody sends you a bill, you'd probably be shocked how much stuff you put in the cart, right? By the way, nothing has prices on it in the store. So you just say, oh, it's pretty good, I'll throw it in, right? That's the way that we do this now. So what we find when we participate with our clients in customer research, and people say, the bill's a surprise, and you can look and actually the bill's almost exactly the same. And it comes out exactly the same day every month, and yet it's still psychologically, it's a surprise for people. So prepay as an opt-in, okay, so really important, not something you force people to, but as an option that you give people is very popular. People do that with their phones now and a number of other services, and that's when you buy gas for your car, and that just clicks for some people as an option. And the extension of that that's a little bit different is if you make payments easier, letting people pay something more regular than monthly basis can be really valuable. People like to index how they pay to how they earn, which I know doesn't mean anything to the utility, it just means something to the customer. So I'd rather pay $10 a week versus $40 a month, and it's the same amount of money, but that just works better for me from a cash flow perspective. There are ways you can do that now with technology that are actually lower cost net for the utility in terms of cost to serve.
Dana, Santil, any thoughts on prepay in the areas that you guys are working with?
Well, I think prepay like so many things, it's a tool in our toolkit, and it depends on how you deploy the technology based on the needs of your community, as we've discussed. But I think, those two benefits are key as we're talking about visibility into energy consumption, into, in a language that people understand, in dollars rather than kilowatt hours. Prepay often offers that benefit. And additionally, I think, low-income people, if we have irregular revenue streams coming in, it can be a very useful option for people.
Yeah, I agree. I think there are pros and cons, but one of the good things is it allows low-income families to plan ahead. And what we know is that people who struggle with income pay the bill that's there when they have the money. So if people are allowed to prepay, when I get my check on the 5th, then I can put $50 or whatever it is on my utility bill versus waiting 30 days when I may or may not have the money to pay.
So we talked about how technology is an enabler of engagement, but one thing we also discussed is how employees within utilities can be better about engaging the community. What role do you guys think employees can play in helping engage customers and engage communities? Damali, I'll start on the end with you. We can kind of work our way down.
Yeah, so I think if we reframed, utilities reframed how they look at their employees, there's somewhat of a sense of we have to keep our employees tight because we don't want them to either say something we're going to be on hook for in front of the PUC for later. But what if we, as a utility, for example, you said, 7 programs that employees could have, $250 for in partnership with maybe either PUC or the other utility or the municipality. And you can set guidelines around that. So now again, when we're going into our own communities, or we're going into communities of our grandparents, or we're going into communities of friends and family, and we're moving, we can set up a small program because we know that this community center over here that would never be on a utility radar is the forefront of this community, and we can go into an educational program. or we can go in and partner with the Public Utility Commission and say, hey, here are all the assistance programs available to you, even if it's just a move to say, hey, here's what's available to you, here's who you need to call, here's what that looks like, so that we can move that needle from 5% even to 10%. And that's a huge challenge, but we have to kind of look at our employees as trusted people in their communities rather than kind of a risk that we have to manage.
I think that employees of utility companies are definitely an underutilized resource. First, most utility companies have so many of them. So there is no other way. I mean, if you said I want to hire advocates to go out into the community, there would be no way for you to afford to hire the number of employees that you have to advocate. So the best way to do it is train your employees, empower your employees to go out and be those advocates. Partner your employees with nonprofit agencies in the community who are already trusted resources. And that helps to give them leverage when you have a community event. If you go out and say DTE Energy is having a community event, they may or may not show up. But then if you say it's the Heat and Warmth Fund or it's United Way, organizations that people trust, in partnership with DTE Energy, you'll get more people, and then you get the best of both worlds and everybody's learning from each other.
I don't know if anybody's here. Is anybody here from ComEd in Chicago? Do we have any ComEd folks in the house? Or okay, Exelon, anybody from Exelon? Hey, we got somebody here. So I'm just going to give them a shout out. What they've done in Chicago as part of their whole, I mean, it's a giant program. It has a lot of moving parts. But they've done exactly that. They've trained their employees to get off and be ambassadors. They don't run away, from people on the street. They're out, whether they're doing work, installing smart meters, upgrading the grid. They really train their people. They flip the script, right? And they say, get out and talk to people, tell people what they do. And they used to try to not have as much as little signage as possible on the trucks so nobody knows ComEd, right? Now they're blessed. This is what we're here for. And then the second thing I'd say, we're talking a little bit about assistance for low-income households. But part of the way you engage in the community is it's a give and a get, right? If you just look like the people who only show up to collect the bill, and then people think you only show up to collect the bill, well, that's because that's what you do, right? So as you think about community solar programs, you've got a lot of communities where you've got a rental aspect, and so those people, even if they could afford it, are not put the solar panels on their house because they don't own the house, right? But if you go to the community center and you create a community solar park at the community center and you advertise that and you get people to buy into it, whether they're buying it by participating in the energy or just feeling some level of ownership in their community. ComEd's done a great thing. They're microgrid projects in a community in Bronzeville. It's an amazing story. If you haven't, I won't take the time here, but go look it up. And that has really revolutionized and kind of changed the whole dynamic of what used to be a pretty adversarial relationship between the utility and some of those disadvantaged communities.
And I think all well said, and I'll just add, or to reiterate, employees are community members and really a great source representing the diversity of the community in a given service territory. And also a great, as we go back to that kind of dialogue, two-way dialogue conversation, a great way to collect information on needs assessment and what's going on in the community, rather than having to go out and do a whole bunch of separate market research. Another great information, another great opportunity to bring access back to the service provider.
And I want to ask this because I think it's important. We know that the industry is undergoing this change of the workforce. A lot of people are retiring. We're bringing in younger workers. So Molly, how is this transitioning of the workforce also impacting utilities' ability to get their employees out there and engaging with the community? How can kind of younger people, as we transition into these positions, how can we engage with our friends, our families? How can we also start to play that community advocate role?
Yeah, so I think it's great because younger people are already, and they want to get out there, they want to be social, and the way that they connect through social networks, if utilities can figure out how to create content or something that doesn't feel like I'm pushing a propagandic propaganda message, right? That's when I go to a lot of sites for utilities, it tends to feel like, here's all the great things we've done and why you should love us, versus here's actually what we're really about and what this means and what's happening in the industry. So where is the kind of viral of what's this conversation, for example? So we know that in the industry, even 5 years ago, we would never have this conversation about customers, let alone an entire conference dedicated to thinking about how we engage with customers. Why are we not sharing that with our younger employees and having them have content and message to say, hey, did you know this about your utility? They're asking these questions and then using them, as you alluded to, for the market research, right? What happens if we say, hey, what do you just think about if the mobile app had a big red stop sign, right? You can get feedback that way. And they already have the networks and the connection points and the points, but there's nothing within, if I'm working for a utility and I'm 25, there's nothing that makes me go viral in a utility unless I'm working for one of the cool, non-regulated utilities.
Trips indexing how cool I am.
Unless it's like an electric vehicle or one of the cool, but if I'm working for you, like you mentioned ComEd's doing a lot of really cool stuff. But if I'm the new employee and I'm 23, I'm 24, I'm 25, what am I actually sharing with my friends and family about the really cool stuff that I'm doing, right? Or am I just saying, they're just like, oh, you work for the utility, my bill is high.
I think having social media and the fact that young people are so engaged gives an opportunity that was never given in history. Right now, through newsletters or newspapers or, pick a way that we traditionally marketed. So providing talking points and cool things, information about the cool things you're doing to your younger employees and encouraging them to share that can go a very long way. But also on the opposite end of that, you talked about so many employees who are retiring. Utilities are experiencing this huge wave of people who are retiring. Recruit them to come back and volunteer as community advocates, right? Who knows more about your company than somebody who's been there 30 years? So you should use that as an opportunity to also help educate.
Just one point that I'd add as we're talking about energy burden, there's a numerator and a denominator there, right? So there's energy costs and there's household income. As we're going through this transition, there's an opportunity for workforce development focused on vulnerable communities and how can we better engage those communities and help them be part of the workforce of the future. And I think that's an important conversation to be having as we're looking at opportunities to better serve our customers and our communities.
So Dana, I'm going to come right back to you in the few minutes we have left. Let's talk about a few particular projects that you guys have been working on or have in mind that kind of address some of these issues of catering to low and moderate income communities. So Dana, what have you guys been working on that is kind of helping you understand these challenges and how to overcome them?
Sure. At TechRe, we're based here in Austin, but we do work all over the state of Texas. We're working on a low-income community solar program that I'm really, really excited about. And as we're talking about opportunities to better leverage data and digital tools at our disposal, we've been doing a lot of work on geospatial mapping of what we're calling energy burden indicators. So looking at housing data, socioeconomic data, certain health indicators to try to target in a given service territory where are those kind of hot spots of where there's the greatest risk of high energy burdens. And then can you pair that, so you have some pretty cool visualizations there, and then can you pair that with on-the-ground research through community-based organizations, through consumer preferences studies, and say, okay, what really is kind of driving the preferences of this community, and how can I tailor my program to make sure that it's successful in meeting their needs? We're super excited about this program that should be launching soon, and then we'll follow it with an equity impact assessment. which is an 18-month study to say, okay, how do we make sure that the financial, the social, the environmental benefits that we expected from that community solar development, how do we make sure that those are actually realized by the community and that the financial benefits are there and kind of not lost somewhere along the way. And the thing that we're so excited about with this is it's replicable. So you can kind of take that same approach and repeat it in other jurisdictions. And really learning from each other. Part of what we do is at the Institute is host discussions among different utility stakeholders, affordable housing providers, social service agencies, and share what's working among each other. And we think there's real opportunity for scale.
Mine will sound self-serving because one of the things that we spend a lot of time working with clients on, it's amazing, we've had this whole conversation, the word regulation hasn't come up once, which is actually kind of cool. But the fact is when everybody's off the stage, we say, well, the regulation says law, right? And so I think that's slowed down the experimentation part of this pretty considerably. So since we're technology folks, we're pushers, right? I mean, that's really what we are, right? And what we find is the social media feedback loops that we're talking about, what we try to push clients to do is just go faster. Just try some stuff, that's small scale, see what works. You'll have some bad ideas, some fails, that's cool, just dump them and move on. But how do we just accelerate the payback? Because if we're talking about the program that was designed in 1983, I'm wondering why it doesn't resonate. I think that's a miss.
I think trying things on a small scale are usually a way to get to better programs. In Michigan, we now have what we call affordable payment programs for most of the major utilities, regulated utilities, and it started as a pilot. And what we have found that for the affordable payment plan, they're basically subsidized monthly payments. So the customer pays a nonprofit or community organization utilizing LIHEAP dollars pays a portion of their bill as well. But it's sort of a reward program. You pay 3 months on time, we pay a portion of your arrears, plus we close that gap in your payment. And it started out as a pilot, but for traditional shutoff protection programs in Michigan, the success rate is generally under 10%, no matter what the program is, whether it's wind protection or shutoff protection. The success rate is about 10%, and the success rate for these programs is more than 80%. So it's made a huge difference in the lives of many families.
So Erica, I'm glad you actually brought up regulation because I was going to reference a program in Philly that the partnership with the Philadelphia Energy Authority, they specifically hire for their solar installation programs at-risk youth from the communities that they're targeting. But I think one of the other things that we've seen that's been really, really helpful is partnerships. And so every state has whatever the equivalent office of the customer advocate that works with kind of as an intermediary between the utility commissions and the utility. Start with them, right? Because they want to see, customers protected, but they also may have a somewhat kind of more flexible kind of thinking through, okay, how do we work through programs? What are the risks? What are some of the, benefits? But making sure that you're bringing your regulators along in the process. Like I said, the programs we did, we were going out and educating, we were working with the PUC, with the customer advocate, with all of the utilities, and then with some retail providers. And so you never saw that before, but it really changed how customers, when they engaged with us and asking questions, they felt like they were covered and they felt like they were protected. And so if you think about not your regulators as your adversaries, but as what do we need to do to change that needle? I'm also a big proponent of jobs. So obviously, if you put pressure, if you say we want to get into a kind of a job creation program and thinking about communities and thinking about reaching communities or thinking about economic benefits, all the governors are going to kind of go along and you can create pressure from different sides.
Well, thank you all. And so I've had my chance to ask the panelists questions. Do we have any questions in the audience for the panelists? Yes, I see. believe there's a microphone right behind you.
Hi, sorry. I'm Kevin Dick. I'm with the Delta Institute in Chicago, and I want to give a shout out to Sunteal. You remember Andrew Burrows from IDEO? So Andrew and I, and he's on our board, we took your ideas and actually built them into our Lumen products. So we actually serve a daily update of bill and dollars. We work with PayPal to be able to pay a bill as flexibly as they want. So we don't do prepay, but we do flex pay. And then we had to solve a really interesting user experience challenge. How do you identify whether somebody is actually eligible for a low-income program without having to have it go anywhere? So we solved that one as well. We're delivering on Facebook. We're working with Google on Rich Communication Services, which is their chat function, and we've got some pilots that we're developing on the ground. I just wanted to give you a really huge shout out. The pilot that you guys did, the Clear Control pilot in Consumers Energy, really underpinned our user experience research. And the work we did in Chicago with ComEd and on the ground with about 150 customers built on top of that. So human-centered design, this approach to actually working with users actually does work in delivering customer experience. And there are challenges I'm happy to talk about, but I just wanted to give you guys a big, everything you said.
Do you have any questions?
Hi, my name's Mark Lissinger, and I really didn't expect this to come up. I'm a landlord for low-income properties up in Lubbock, and that's not why I'm here, but this is fascinating. And I think the portrayal that I heard inadvertently is a little too warm and fuzzy. I know my residents oftentimes don't have phone service. It's off and on. And I also know their utility bills oftentimes are as much or more than their rent. And our utility is owned by the municipality, and there is nothing but acrimony between the community and utility service. And I'm kind of caught in the middle. I'm oftentimes trying to figure out, how can I help you keep your lights on and stay in business? So it was very synchronistic that this was the topic of this panel discussion, because, you know, and let you guys know that maybe it's a little worse than people think. I don't think most of the people in this room probably don't understand poverty. I mean, I probably shouldn't say that. Really understand generational poverty and the fact that people don't have phone service. Elderly people do not know what an app store is, or how, if they had a car, how to get in it and go find it and buy one of these things that the kids are talking about. So I really appreciate this discussion, and I hope it can be continued and maybe even a little more down and dirty, because I think it's worse than people are aware. And love your energy, love your neighbor. I mean, some of your neighbors don't have energy, and perhaps we could all participate in eliminating that.
All right, thank you for your thoughts. And so we did not get to any questions, but please join me in thanking the panelists for having to straighten this
Just quickly want to speak to that, and I applaud your comments, sir, because it is tough for a lot of people, and the answers, we'll never get all the answers we need in a 1 hour panel. But I think it's important, like Dana mentioned, the importance of combining affordable housing with affordable utilities, and making sure that our policies are overlapping in a way that makes sense for people. If you tell me that this is affordable because it's 30% of my monthly income, but then also my gas bill is $500, it quickly becomes unaffordable. So I would say to you, make those same comments to your policymakers, your legislators, your congressional representatives, the people who are creating policy for these low-income programs. And then lastly, just about every utility company in this country has some kind of energy waste or energy efficiency program where they can help you make your your homes that you're renting more energy efficient so that the bills are more affordable for the people who are living there.
Thank you.
All right.